Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Doug Willett, your MC for the evening. Welcome to Sandoval's first candidate question and answer session. The session is brought to you by the Campaign Committee, a subset of the Electronic Voting Committee formed to assist moderator Jerry Evans in the conduct of this election. Along with this event, a second event, the community picnic on Sunday, March 1st, will provide voters ample opportunity to get to know the candidates and get your questions answered. The format tonight is to begin with a 2-minute opening statements by each candidate. This will be followed by 2 rounds of questioning by our moderators based on the questions that residents submitted to our email election addressed. The formal part of the program will end with 2 3-minute closing statements by each candidate. That'll be a 2 to 3 minute, depending on where the time is. If all goes according to plan, we hope we'll finish the questioning by 8:30 p.m. The candidates will then be available for a half hour to mingle and to answer individual questions you might have. That's the plan. To fit into our time frame, we need your cooperation as an audience. Please turn your cell phones to vibrate and keep your comments to your neighbors to a minimum. The candidates will not be responding to shout-outs from the audience. You will have a time at the end to talk to the candidates on a one-on-one basis. All questions will come from our moderators, Jerry Kern and Grady Stevens sitting over there. Eric Nicolai here is our timekeeper with his extremely sophisticated red light system. And Vic Neifeld, as usual, is our sound and video expert. Please remember that the biggest audience for this is sitting in their living rooms, watching it on the Facebook channel or on YouTube. So the more noise you make in here, the less they can hear at home. So keep that in mind. Please keep the applause and coming and going to a minimum. Committee members Chris Bechtel sitting over here, Mike Christo sitting over there, will act as marshals. And eye contact from one of them should be enough to remind you of our need for decorum. A final note, I expected Tom Robertson to be here to give the opening address, his opening remarks. He has to be on a plane tonight out of Regional Southwest at 9 o'clock, but he apparently went right to the airport. So we will not be having Tom participating tonight. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the give and take. Jerry, Grady, it's all yours. Yeah, he'll talk about that. The moderators will do that.
During the first round, each candidate, in the order that they're seated, will have 2 minutes to make an opening candidate introduction. Ray, we'll start with you.
And I will go to yellow 30 seconds before your time is up.
Point of order. The sheet that I have says a 3-minute opening statement and a 2-minute closing.
That was an early one, Don. There was one that came out after that. Kathy, what does yours say? The information, let's go to 3. If you have 3, we'll adjust. We changed it about a week ago. And I thought I'd notify you of that.
Okay. Ray, go ahead.
Hi, neighbors. My name is Ray Mayer. I moved into the community just about a year ago. And I'm running for the board because I feel that my real estate background, which consists of 45 years in the real estate business, I've owned real estate offices, I've owned a mortgage company. I currently work as a mortgage loan officer for a major bank. I feel that experience gives me the background where I can bring some new ideas and help this community to grow. There are 2 major aspects that I'm concerned with and that I feel I can help make things better. One is quality of life, and they are interrelated, and the other one is property value, and they're connected. The better the quality of life, the more desirable the community becomes, and property values go up. And this is our investment, these are our homes. There's a number of areas where I feel we can do better. I think this is a beautiful community. I think it's definitely the premier community in Cape Coral. Working in the mortgage business, I see what's out there, and this is the place to be. There's no question about it. The whole idea is to just make it better, and there's some room to do that. We have a few areas that I am concerned about. One is I think we are developing a parking problem. The reason for this is families moved here 10, 12 years ago with small children. Those children are now teenagers and have cars. So those families that had 1 or 2 cars now have 3, 4, 5 cars. Where do we put them? Something's got to be done about that because it is becoming a major issue. The other area I really would like to see this become an owner-occupied community. We know that there's sometimes a need to rent houses out, but I don't think we want an influx of investors, people who are coming here simply to make money. It brings down property value. When we evaluate a condo complex, when we evaluate co-ops in New York, we look at investor concentration. It's a major factor in determining property value. So I want to see this become an owner-occupied community, and the way to do that is to make it desirable for families to move in, and that'll help you with your property values also, because the more demand, prices go up. Simple fact. That's basically what I'm looking to do.
Thank you very much. And let's give the timer just a minute to reset.
Okay.
30 minutes, correct?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
We'll continue with Todd, please.
Good evening. My name is Todd Reinhardt, and it's fantastic to see the participation that we have out for this wonderful event. I'd like to thank Doug and the Elections Committee for organizing this event. This is fantastic. This is a great way to communicate our message. I've been a resident of Sandoval since 2009. I live in Greendale with my lovely wife, Lisa, and I have been basically a champion for positive change and transparency in this community since about 4 years ago. What's my personal commitment to Sandoval? I'll just kind of give you an idea. My plan's different than my wife's plan. I have about 10 years that I plan on continuing to work in the business field, which is commercial banking. My wife would like to retire next year if possible, so that's the plan. Am I committed to Sandoval? Absolutely. Obviously, we're going to be residents for a long time, and in addition, my wonderful stepson, my daughter-in-law, and my granddaughter live in Anguilla, so we are committed to Sandoval. Why elect me? Most importantly is I am a trusted guardian of your money. Your hard-earned money that you contribute to this HOA is absolutely vital. We have a fiduciary responsibility to protect that for you. Ray said it earlier, protect our property values. That's the single largest investment that we all make is our home. How we create it, the way that it looks, the way it presents itself creates the demand for people that want to live in Sandoval. And trust me, they want to live in Sandoval because, as Marilyn and I were talking about, Sandoval is just a wonderful community. It's a non-pre-platted type of subdivision, underground utilities. It's fabulous. Some of the things is we need to develop proactive strategies, for example, in regards to infrastructure. I think we take that for granted. Hard to believe, but Sandoval is 15 years old. Things start to break. I know in our house, when we got to about the 10-year mark, we were replacing appliances almost on a monthly basis. So we have to be proactive to make sure that the infrastructure is protected. Ray talked about this. We have to continue to have a quality product that we deliver to all of our residents and property owners. Here's
30
one.
seconds.
We need to enforce deed restrictions. When I say that is, we are a deed-restricted community. There's rules, there's regulations. But again, the catch to that is, let's do it in a common sense, non-selective enforcement type of situation. Let's tackle the big things first, and then let's move on to the smaller things. I heard a story about a house in Vermont that somebody received 18
Time.
violations on. That's 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. If the timer is reset, we will continue with Marilyn,
Slightly yellow vape means you have 30 seconds left in your time.
and we'll call that
Are you
out.
going to start the light over again for me?
Yes. Yeah, and we'll call it out at 30 seconds.
I'm Marilyn Stout, and I'm asking for your vote to remain on this board. I've lived in 6 states and 2 foreign countries. I've lived in Cape Coral for 38 years. This is my 3rd home. And Sandoval is the best of all possible worlds. I love it here. And I think that in 2019, the board made great strides. Not as much as we wanted, but we were able to move forward. And now I'm going to share a story with you that I heard last night. I went to Big Blue for a campaign fundraiser for a city council member. In conversation, I met a gentleman who owned 3 units here in Sandoval. He had sold one of them, and he was not happy with the $3,000 cost to sell that home. And I tried to explain to him the reason why it went on, but that really didn't bother him nearly so much as what he felt about our Sandoval past president, who he said continually lied to him. And I said, you know, the board kind of felt the same way too when we found out. And it's just a fact that if 2 individuals, the then general manager and the past president, did not share the information, there just was no way for the board to understand everything that was going on. That is not a problem now, and it has not been a problem since the election last year in March. We have a fantastic president and a great general manager. So consequently, I believe that we can continue to move forward, not without problems. There, daily life, you're going to have problems. But we discuss them. We come to conclusions. Things happen in a positive way. So consequently, I believe that with the committees that we have that have really good chairs, that we can address the expansion committee, the expansion of the
30
clubhouse.
seconds.
This committee that is dealing with the expansion and the construction company is fantastic. So consequently, I'm really looking forward to the groundbreaking and a completed clubhouse. Thank you.
Next up, Melanie Palmer.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to come out. It's great to see the clubhouse have a full room, and as well as everybody watching from home. My name is Melanie Palmer, and I live in Phase 3 on Lamb Bay Court. And my family's moved to Sandoval probably about 4 years ago. I would love to be able to serve on the board because I feel that for our community, we have so much untapped potential. I think just from what we saw previously with a lack of transparency, like Marilyn had said this last year, we learned so much. And no, we don't love everything that we learned, but at least we now know where the community stands. And I feel that from last year, of all the learning that happened, knowing what we know now, we now want to transition over to how do we get to the next phase. So how do we start to repair, rebuild, restore, and continue to grow? Todd had mentioned that the community's 15 years old. You know, we're a living, breathing entity, and it changes and goes through cycles. And I feel that if we're able to address concerns up front, be able to be more proactive about how we're planning things, we can stop being in a firefighting mode all the time. We don't have to constantly focus on the problem directly in front of us. We can start to get ahead of it and have a vision for the future. I'm excited that I feel I have a lot of opportunities to be able to contribute. I do still currently work full-time, and being in the workforce, there's a lot of new technology advancements, there's a lot of new process improvements and techniques, and I have some ideas that I would like to be able to bring to Sandoval. That's it.
Thank you. Eric, are you ready? All right, we'll continue with Don Wells.
I want to thank everyone for coming, and I want to thank everyone that worked to make this evening possible. I think they did a fine job, and it's been a real pleasure to be able to participate in something like this. And as your HOA board president, I want you to know that it's been my pleasure to serve you over the past 12 months in an entirely different role than in the first 2 years. My question to each of you is this: are you pleased how the board was run this year? If your answer is yes, then I solicit your vote. I personally believe that the team that you elected last year has had a very successful year and have served you admirably. As a group, we have expressed our concerns to the city examiner regarding the 84-acre project, which turned out to be quite positive. We completed the aeration of our lakes. We've installed 7 street lights, 54 crosswalk, stop, and speed limit signs around the community. And this provided an additional safety factor for a 10-year cost savings of $30,000. Approved the installation of an 1,845-foot new permanent wall along the Vermont and Somerville perimeters, and put the clubhouse project back on the rails with the hiring of a construction manager, Stevens Construction. Over the past 2 weeks, your committee has met twice, reviewing building designs. We have vetted an architect contract, and just this afternoon received a contract proposal for a civil engineer portion of the project. This project is now being handled by professionals, and I'm going to tell you that the sunshade is not far off. Most importantly, put the community financial records on full display. These types of projects require team-built solutions, an atmosphere of full disclosure, and effective communication, and I feel that we are accomplishing each one of these. Our work's not done. We still have 3 critical projects that are in the various stages of completion. The sunshade installation, which is permitted and ready to go. And for the record, my vote has been for an immediate installation on 2 occasions in which the Clubhouse Improvement Committee has discussed this. As much as last evening, I voted to put it up immediately. The committee decided they needed to wait. So just for the record, I'm for putting it up. 2 parking lots located at Happy Paws Dog Park and the tennis courts. And the Clubhouse Improvement Project, which I've already addressed. So I fully expect the next 12 months will see these projects either complete or substantial progress. There are additional areas of concern like the gate system and landscape preservation, and I live by the proverb, actions speak louder than words. You can talk all day long, but what you do is most important. So I would be honored to continue to serve you, and I will think, include, communicate, then do. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Don. Are you ready? All right. Next up is Kathy Conway.
All right. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. It's nice to see you. My name is Kathy Conway, and I'm a candidate for the 2020 HOA Board. I live on Vareo Court, and I've been a full-time resident here in Sandoval since October of 2015. Prior to moving to Florida, I lived in Arlington, Virginia, and worked in Washington, D.C. for the federal government. I was born and raised in Buffalo, and I remain an avid Buffalo Bills fan. Had to get that in there. I'm one of 9 children born to Irish immigrants to the United States. My immediate family lives in Western New York. I always enjoy my visits up north to see family and those lifelong friends. After college, I accepted a civil service job offer from the United States Customs Service in the port of Niagara Falls, New York. As a customs inspector, I spent 13 years working on the Canadian border with additional duty assignments in San Diego, Miami, and Detroit. During the period of 1993 through 2014, I worked in our customs headquarter operations in Washington, D.C. I held a number of customs program management, supervisory, and director level positions, providing both policy and operational oversight. Oftentimes, there was extensive travel, both domestic and international, which I always enjoyed. I spent 5 years in Brussels, Belgium, after 9/11, the tragic events of 9/11, so it was an amazing opportunity. My distinguished career provided numerous opportunities to add value with the goal of being transparent, effective, and efficient as I rose among management and leadership ranks. After 36 years of federal government service, I retired in 2014 with an eye on moving to Southwest Florida. I was drawn to Sandoval and without much hesitation made an offer on a new build in Phase 3. I homesteaded in early 2016. I love Sandoval, it's my home. I care about this community, my neighbors, and our amenities. The community needs to come together. I truly believe we can do anything if we work together. I wish to do my part to make Sandoval an even better place to live. Running for the Sandoval Board of Directors is a serious commitment, and if elected to the board, you can trust I will honor that commitment. Let your voice be heard. Please vote on or before March 12th. I value your support and your vote. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Kathy. Next up, we have Al Roper.
Good evening, residents of Sandoval. My name is Al Roper, and I am a current board member seeking re-election. I have lived in Sandoval for the past 7 years with my wife, Sally. We are originally from northern Iowa, where we still own a farm and rental property. In addition to farming, I also owned a vending business for over 25 years worked full-time as a terminal operator, office manager at a petroleum pipeline. Sally and I both feel that Sandoval is a great place to call home, and I have been involved with numerous projects, large and small, that have enhanced or maintained our facilities. In February of 2017, I received the Sandoval Resident Star Award for my volunteerism. I have personally been involved in several hundred projects over the years. At the pool, I have refurbished speakers, lounge chairs, and lights. At the tennis, basketball, and volleyball courts, I've repaired the fencing, replaced the nets, and installed timers on the light switches. I currently maintain the bollard lights, and I also respond to numerous entrance gate strikes. I have not, and I will not, make any promises concerning what I will accomplish because I fully understand and accept that a board of directors needs to act as a team. I realize that I have 6 other opinions to consider at all times. As a board member, I have worked with management as well as past and present boards in order to get stuff done for Sandoval. I helped to oversee the lake aeration installation as well as the procurement and installation of the 7 new streetlights. The wall at Verdmont Somerville is currently being replaced, and this week a contractor has been chosen for the construction of the new dog park and tennis court parking lots, which we very much need, and this will begin very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. That concludes the first section of our discussion. For the second portion, each candidate will be asked a question on one of the following topics and allowed 1.5 minutes to respond. Candidates have been pre-selected into a random order, and the topics are current concerns, management company, finance, and finance controls.
Candidates, at any point, if you need the question repeated or want to know the topic that you're discussing, just let us know. We'll be glad to go over it again. Marilyn, can you hear? You need me to repeat that? I'm sorry. Oh, no worries. If you need us to repeat the question, just let us know. The topics are current concerns, management company, and finance controls. And we will choose the order. You will go first, Marilyn, and I'll read you the question.
All right. I'm going April. And the main
Wait,
reason
no,
I'm going...
Marilyn, we've got the question. We'll give you the question.
I thought I was first.
But you are. But we will tell you what the question is. But when we do come to that question, you'll have an opportunity as well.
Okay. I
Sorry.
thought I picked one. Doug, you told us that we pick one.
So everybody's going to prep on that one.
Okay, round 3, not this round.
No.
This one.
Okay,
This
let's
is
go.
this is current concerns. Marilyn, what do you see as our single biggest community concern, and what actions do you feel we should take to resolve it?
Okay, biggest concern is clubhouse expansion. And I think things are going very well. We have a fantastic company in Mark Stevens' company. He's building Fine Mark's Bank, and in case you go down college in Winkler, that's Mark Stevens. So he's a great builder, and I just learned that Avalon Engineering is going to do our civil engineering, another great company. So if you have great companies doing your project, you should have a beautiful result. Okay?
Perfect. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Al Roper. Same question, Al. Would you like me to repeat that? Sure. Al, what do you see as our single biggest community concern, and what actions do you feel we should take to resolve it?
I believe that the community is definitely concerned about the expansion of the clubhouse, and a lot of this concern is reflected and mirrored in the divisiveness that is in this community, and I think that that's a shame. I think if we could get a lot of people together, if we can all work as a team, we are going to go ahead with this expansion. I think the entire community needs to accept that. I think the entire community needs to accept it's not going to be what we were told it was going to be a few years ago. It's going to be something less, but it is going to happen. And I think if we all team together, hard work makes people friends. I know in Iowa, when you have a job to do and you get a bunch of people together to do it, you get Republicans working with Democrats, men working with women, et cetera. And I think that would help our community greatly if we could all come together on this project.
Thank you, Al. Next up is Kathy Conway. Do you need the question?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All right.
So current concerns, clubhouse expansion, absolutely. Todd talked about our community being 15 years old, and you hear from residents a host of concerns and issues, and you have to look at, the underlying factor. What is the issue? What is the concern? So we have to look at our governing documents, I feel. They explain the responsibilities of both the HOA and us, the homeowners. So when we purchased our homes, we were provided the governing documents, and we are expected to live by these government documents. The covenants, conditions, and restrictions outline a set of standards and rule sets, if you will. And some of this applies to the color of your house. It applies to parking, just to name a few. And in recent times, we've heard a lot about the garbage cans, the overnight parking, street level access, golf carts. So the question I have is it time to review and possibly amend those governing documents? Should we be taking a good hard look? I understand and I recognize that it'll be tedious work and it would really involve the full service property management and a legal counsel to go through this. But I think it's worth looking at, and I think it would resolve a number of issues and help bring the community together, as Al said.
Thank you. Time.
Did I get it in? As Al said.
Thank you, Kathy. Ray, you're up next. Would you like me to repeat the question? Okay, sure. Ray, what do you see as our single biggest community concern, and what actions do you feel we should take to resolve it?
Well, overall, money-wise and so on, it sounds like it's the clubhouse. So my feelings about the clubhouse is everything I've heard, I don't see a clear plan. What are we going to do with it? What will be done with? Are we going to have the same type of events as they're currently having? If that's the plan, we don't need it. If we've got to have a clear plan as far as how we're going to utilize this clubhouse. Okay. Also, consideration: this community owns a building which is sitting right outside the gates of Veterans, sitting there empty. We don't own it? I was told we do. I'm sorry about that. Okay. Who owns it? Who owns it?
Remarks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry. I didn't know that was.
Quite all right.
I'm the new kid on the block, so excuse me. But basically, like I said, we have to figure out
30
exactly
seconds.
what we're going to do with it. I have seen also estimates with this expansion that vary by almost $1 million. I've seen estimates up to $3 million. I've seen some that were down around 1.5. So I really think we have to have a clear plan, and we have to have a clear idea of what we're going to utilize this for, how it's going to be set up, how much of it will be a gym, how much it'll be used for social events, what social events we're going to have,
Time.
and so on.
Thank you, Ray.
Okay.
Next up is Melanie Palmer. Need the question or no?
No, I'm good.
Thank you.
So a definite community concern is definitely financials. Like the financials is critical to everything that we're doing in here. I know there's another question about financial control, so I'm going to wait on that. But my other piece is definitely the division within the community. Having been a street liaison and working on the clubhouse committee, that I have interacted with people that I never ever would have met just in our day-to-day passing. Our lives are just totally different, and when we can get people together and actually start having meaningful conversations, you can start to understand where each side is coming from. And I think the division that has been growing and festering for several years now, I think the clubhouse is just a piece of it. It's not the root cause. I think we need to identify what the root cause is and start to repair those pieces for it. The clubhouse will absolutely be a benefit to the community. It's not going to be the huge drawings we saw.
30 seconds, Melanie.
3 million, whatever. But I do think it'll be a benefit to the community, and we do have to make sure that it's a space that all residents can benefit from, so it doesn't feel like I'm paying for something that I never get to use.
Thank you, Melanie. Next up will be Todd Reinhardt. Would you like the question, Todd?
I think I've got it.
Okay, good.
You tell me when. All right, I'm going to be very quick because I can be long-winded. First of all, in regards to the clubhouse expansion, deliver it on budget, no more surprises, no more earmarks, no exceptions, period. It's a done deal. Financials, contingency financing. We made a step this year in order to put away $24,000 in the budget in order to handle contingency funding. I'm here to tell you, we need to be planning that in case there was a natural disaster such as a hurricane, that we have funds available and set aside that we can basically bridge any gap that happens with a natural disaster. Reserves. Resales as the only source of revenue is very dangerous. I'm going to tell you, because I am a conservative banker, there's going to be a time where you're going to see a peak and then you're going to see a valley. When those liabilities are out there and you don't have a funding source, that will be a real problem. No long-term vendor contracts that don't have performance metrics in them or quality standards, period. We need to be able to go in, look, assess, and get out.
30
Last but
seconds,
not
Todd.
least, telecommunications funds. Keep this in mind. Nothing's given on this CenturyLink thing. They can get out of this thing and exit before their contract is done. That funding source may end. Keep that in mind.
Thank you, Todd.
Last up is Don Wells.
I echo Melanie's concerns, and that was going to be my topic in discussing this particular situation. I think that, all the issues that we have here could be solved and could be worked with if we work together, and we're not working together. we are attacking each other, and that's very unfortunate. I've heard discussion about the sunshade and how people are dragging their feet and they don't want it, and that's not the right thing, and that is not the case at all. We met with the construction manager and with the architect, and they both had concerns about where that building was going to be placed and would it possibly affect the sunshade. And I'm going to tell you, Rick Devine yesterday did a complete analysis of how that building would fit in there. And he felt that it was about 15 feet from the playground. The architect said 16.8, and when the survey was done, the playground wasn't surveyed. So we said, Rick, would you agree to put that playground up now? And if it's in the wrong place, you take it down? And even Rick Devine said that he wouldn't do it. So we just need to calm down with that, with the rhetoric, please.
Thank you, Don. Okay, that is the all of the responses to the first question. You guys okay? You ready for second question? Okay, Don, we're going to start with you this time. We're picking on you. And this is a long one, so if you want me to, I can repeat it or just give you the highlights of the question. Don, regardless of our management company, what management practices or services do you feel we should enact to increase the effectiveness of both the board and management company in maintaining our community?
I think that when we established a management company, and I happened to go visit 18 different communities that were managed by 4 different management companies, and it was a very eye-opening experience. What does a management company provide to us? A management company, the main thing that they provide is financials and taking care of our paying the bills and giving us a financial statement and doing the audits and things of this nature. That is critical. The other things is the actual management and knowing the governing documents, and we are working towards that. The fact that maybe our staff is not what it should be in order to service a community of this size is something that I think we need to take into consideration. So we have discussed that with management, and I think that they're going to get some proposals, and I see some improvements coming.
Thank you, Don.
Next up is Kathy Conway. Do you need me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Certainly. Regardless of our management company, what management practices or services do you feel we should enact to increase the effectiveness of both the board and the management company in maintaining our community?
All right. I support hiring a full-service professional management company and maximizing the resources it offers. We must direct a path forward to becoming an effective and efficiently run and well-funded community. The current Pope contract is up this year. Due diligence is required to have a look at past performance as well as see what other services are out there. Key focus points for any comparative analysis include high quality, best value, level of service, and customer service. Let's compare apples to apples. Key topics are administrative services, account receivable management, site management, accounting services, as Don said, and IT support. We need to look at the costs for the full menu versus an a la carte option. When we look at the management policies, it's important to note that
30
the
seconds.
board sets the policy and procedures while the management company enforces or executes them consistently. The goal with employing a full-service personal management, I feel, is saving our community a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of stress. The effort should enhance our property values, as Ray said, as well as owner satisfaction and a well-maintained community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Al, you're up next. Do you need the question?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
From what I see, I think that we are currently severely short on staffing. It doesn't matter which management company we have, it's going to cost us some money to increase the size of our staff. I think one staff member that we should probably have is maybe an assistant manager to take some of the weight off of our GM. I know that Jerry puts in a lot of time, a lot of effort, and it's like he's in quicksand. He's working as hard as he can, putting in a lot of time, and I know he could certainly use some help. Another staff member that I think we could certainly use is a maintenance person. Believe me, I do a lot of the maintenance work around here for gratis. I enjoy doing it. However, if we had a professional maintenance man on staff, this place would be taken care of like it should be. Thank you.
Thank you, Al.
Next up, Todd Reinhardt.
I'll try. Without a doubt, the Pope contract, Jerry, no offense to any of my comments, comes up for renewal or look at in 2020. We definitely need to have an RFP put together so that we're comparing scope of work with each of the vendors that we have. There is an economies of scale. I support full service professional property management. There is an economies of scale when it comes to legal, accounting, employee benefits, insurance, vendor discounts, technology, etc. I worked on this project 4 years ago with, I think there was a team of 5 of us that worked to put together a proposal that Rob Z put together and made the presentation. So I'm very familiar with how that works. Most importantly, there should be no more micromanagement by the board of Sandoval HOA staff. Jerry should be allowed the freedom to do his job, given direction by the board through policy and procedure, and let him execute it. That's his job. And again, last but not least, with a full service property manager, they already have the playbook. We keep reinventing solutions to things that are already out there that they've experienced. They've got the playbook. Let's use them.
Thank you, Todd. Next up, Marilyn, would you like me to repeat the question?
I think I've got it.
Excellent.
Basically, I think Pope does a good job. Yes, we do need additional staff. And Jerry had it in the budget for one additional person, and we did hire one, but there was one additional that he recommended. However, because of the increase in the budget due to the landscaping, that employee had to be eliminated for this particular year. Although that doesn't mean that it won't be in the next, that individual won't be in the next budget, and maybe even sooner if things run better than anticipated. Budgets are a guesstimate. You're just never sure whether the amount that you have placed in a line item is going to necessarily be used. Is that not correct? So it may be that we hire somebody sooner. And one of the things I liked about Debbie Hartman, one of the executives with Pope, when she came last week, she told us that one of the Pope executives is going to start attending our board meetings. Not every board meeting, but they're going to at least once per quarter attend a board meeting to see how everything is run. I really appreciated her emails and the time she spent with us. We were in executive session for, I guess it was a couple of hours. And I'm satisfied with Pope. I do know we have had staff turnover. Jerry's only been with us a year. But eventually, all will be well.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Next up is Ray Mayer. You have the question? Go.
Having worked in property management in the past, I do believe in a full-service management company. I think it's important. I believe that the community overall is well-maintained. It's a gorgeous community, and I think they're doing a very good job. There are some areas where I've heard some complaints, mainly along the lines of landscaping and so on, and I think there's probably going to be a need for the management company to speak to some gardeners. But overall, I think that they're doing a good job, And, but if the contract is coming up for negotiation, negotiation means exactly that. We have to negotiate it, and we have to look at what other options are available before just automatically renewing a contract. That's
Thank you, Ray. Last but not least for this question is Melanie Palmer. I think you got the question.
So, I mean, I think the first thing is that we really need to, as a community, sit down and list out all of our requirements. What exactly do we want from a property management company? We know we want full service, but there's very different variations of what full service means. So I think we have to be able to sit down and list out all of our requirements for that, as well as the acceptance criteria of if they provide this service, well, that has to include A, B, and C, so that we know what we're getting for each one of these potential companies. With an RFP, we can work through that. And Pope may be the best service, it may be the absolute value, but I truly feel like if the contract is coming due, and not just with a property management company contract, but a landscaping contract or any other contract, it would be negligent on the board's behalf to not research what else is out there. Every company changes, options change all the time. We need to be able to be reviewing and reevaluating if what we sign up for today
30 seconds.
is what we think we are going to need 3 or 5 years from now, whatever that contract is going to have us locked into. And I will always say I would love to have more technology implemented. You're going to notice a little theme, technology.
Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you. So for our last question, the question is, what are your thoughts on how our operating contingency and reserves are currently funded and reported? What changes do you feel are needed, and or why are we in good shape? First up, Todd Reinhardt.
Go figure, right? You tell me when. I'm ready when you are. All right. So the question is, and I already covered it, I think once again it's a situation to where we really need to be proactive on the contingency funding. You know, the costs during a hurricane or a natural disaster, now keep in mind, insurance does not cover landscaping and all the things associated with a natural disaster. But wouldn't it be comforting to know that we do have a nest egg, that we could do all the work that's needed to get us back in operational in a short period of time? Without a doubt. The reserves, I've talked about that. I don't have an answer on how we fund the reserves. My comment is that we need to be a little bit different focused than just resales being 100% of our funding source. We need to look at how we can do this to achieve that big liability number that's out there. So again, I'm a conservative banker, I have a financial background, but there's a lot of work that needs to go into this particular projection
30 seconds.
of the reserve fund, and it's going to take some time and effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Same question. Kathy, you're up. Would you like me to repeat it?
Yes, please.
Kathy, what are your thoughts on how our operating contingency and reserves are currently funded and reported? What changes do you feel are needed, or why are we in good shape?
Okay, thank you. This question is similar to the one that Doug Willett asked, and I think it was published already, wasn't it? I can't remember. Okay, so I believe the board members have a fiduciary duty to ensure our HOA has adequate reserve funds to avoid special assessments, borrowing, and unpleasant emergency conditions. I feel raised assessments and special assessments are inefficient solutions, and they really penalize the current homeowners for the HOA's lack of planning. Therefore, properly maintaining a reserve fund is of the utmost importance. By conducting and updating the periodic reserve study and outlining current maintenance projects line items within the reserve budget, the board should be able to make reasonable business decisions without the need for special assessments. And as Todd said, and we've discussed, currently our reserve fund is funded by resales, $3,000 per sale. The concern that I have is with the build-out and phased development complete, we're still counting on resales to fund reserves. Any downturn in the economy will impact the housing market and resales, and thus our reserve fund. A possible solution is once the clubhouse expansion project is complete and fully funded, do we sunset the monthly collection of $47 a home directed to the telecommunications fund and shut it down, or do we reallocate that money now into the reserve fund? Something to consider.
Time.
Thank you, Kathy.
Okay. Next up is Don Wells.
My feeling is that, you ride a horse until it drops, and then you get another horse. And I feel that, the reserve funding that we are using now is working. I think it will work in a downturn? No, I don't. But who's ultimately responsible to paying for everything here in Sandoval? The homeowner. So if we have a mechanism that will fund this reserve fund for as long as it will, then we need to do that. This year we were well over $100,000 over what the anticipated amount would be on home sales. If this year is lower, then we have to pony up and realize that we have to maintain a certain level. That certain level is determined by our reserve study, and we have a value of how much we need to be putting into that study every single year. And as I said, this year, we were way over that. If we're not over it the next year, then we have to then at that point say, wow, maybe we need to do something different. And the telecommunications fund, again, let's ride that horse until it doesn't work anymore. And then it's been a blessing to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Go red?
No.
Let me just say you guys are doing really, really well. Same question. Melanie Palmer, you're up.
So for the operating budget, I believe as far as what the board members are now receiving from a detailed report out, I think it should be adequate for the information that you need to have from it. I think previously all the information wasn't being passed on to the board. So I think at least we're getting the information now, or the board would be getting the information now. It seems like from a paycheck to paycheck scenario, operating is okay. As far as funding the reserves only through the resale value, that's pretty concerning to me. I know like for at least the next several years, yes, it's low amounts that are scheduled out for the reserves. It's close to, I don't know, 300, 400,000, varying around that. But in just 8 years, we're looking at needing to do close to $1 million in repair just for that 1 year. And I know we can stagger and we can change things around. But it's very scary to think that how quickly I have daughters, how quickly 8 years can go by.
30 seconds.
In a minute, it seems like we just are going to be very short. That's my concern, is the reserves.
Thank you, Melanie.
Next up, Al Roper.
I would like to say that I pretty much agree with what Don had said. You can imagine that we've had some discussion about this in the past. I think that the current way that we are funding our reserves is good for now. Is there any reason why we need to start paying in a different way at this point in time? I agree with Don. I said no. I think as long as this is working, once the $3,000 we're not selling as many resales, we can look at it. We will know, instead of having 130, 140 sales a year, it starts dropping, the rate is dropping. We can say, well, maybe this is time we need to start an assessment. And of course, we're all paying for it one way or the other. As for the contingency, I don't think we have to have a huge pot. We do have to have some money in there, enough
30 seconds.
You never insure something for 100% its value because it's too expensive. So if you go at 60, 70%, something like that, if we could build up a contingency fund to that amount, to an acceptable amount, I think that would be a positive way to go at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Marilyn, this is your opportunity to shine now. This is your question.
And you know, campaign schools tell you to stand when you speak, so Todd's doing it right every time. On finances. First of all, we spent a lot of time in this year's budget because we wanted the increase percentage to be kept low as we could do. When the reserve study came out, I was a little concerned with it because the one area that I really recognized was the replacement of streets, and it had 15 years. The city uses 20 to 25 years, and north of Pine Island Road, it's like 30 years. So consequently, when I saw 15 years, I thought how unrealistic this was, particularly for a gated community where the roads aren't used like they are outside of our community. So I asked Bill, who's my finance guy, Bill Tubb, I trust him,
30 seconds.
and he said, well, they like to do it very conservatively so that they don't have to pay up if things don't last as long as what is predicted. So consequently, common sense tells me we have enough money in our reserve account. And FEMA will help with a hurricane, although I do believe in increasing our contingency fund.
Good job. Thank you, Marilyn.
Last but not least, Ray Mayer.
I believe in don't fix it if it's not broken. It seems to be working right now. However, we have to keep in mind we are in the midst of an incredible real estate market. So to depend on real estate sales to fund your reserves, this party is going to come to an end because we cannot depend on sales being like this. At that particular time, increasing the fee could be counterproductive because if you're in a market where it's difficult to sell, now you've increased the fee, you've made it only more difficult to sell. So it's something that we're going to have to look at long term. Right now, it's all good because the market like it is and everything indicates it's going to continue. The sales should stay strong and we should be able to continue to fund reserves with real estate sales.
30 seconds. You done? Thank you, Ray.
That concludes our round 2 questions. So for round 3, and our final question, the candidates will have a choice of 3 topics. So, and since we're running a little ahead of time, I think we have the luxury we can be a little liberal. We're going to allow 1.5 minutes in response instead of 1. It was intended to be a speed round, but we've got a little time, so we'll give them a little extra if they need it. So for the last question, we'll have a choice of one of the 3 following topics: gate access, landscaping, overnight parking. Those are the 3 topics. First up will be Melanie Palmer.
Landscaping.
Landscaping. Here is the landscaping question. Landscaping is a big expense and gets a lot of discussion. What should be our approach to common area and homeowner landscaping and your approach to affect change?
Okay, so to start with just the contracting in general between both of them, I think we absolutely have to avoid getting locked into long contracts. They have to be as short as possible with an option to extend if services are provided well, but we have to try to start getting shorter contracts. Have to make sure that there's exit clauses, and in my world it's SLAs, so it's service level agreements. So what exactly are we agreeing that you're going to provide at what level by what time? Recently, Linda, my street liaison duo here, we met with our landscape, evergreen, down to earth, whatever they're changing their names to. But every single problem was submit a work order. Submit a work order for that. You need to submit a work order for that. And like, we're paying you to do a job. I should not have to submit a work order to ask you to do the job. So
30 seconds.
I get very frustrated with phase 3 landscaping. I think all of that has to get addressed. And then the other piece is, we were recently, I don't know, we were at some meeting, and I think somebody had asked Al if he could go out and inspect the sprinklers before they could be paid off on and stuff. Like, we should not have a board doing that level of work. We need to be able to hold these landscapers accountable, because it is a big community. It's a lot of space to cover, and we need help.
Time.
Thank you, Melanie. Good job.
Thank you.
So what say we just make them start answering in the form of a question now? Okay, so, okay, no, we won't do it that way. So, Ray, you're up next. The 3 categories again are gate access, landscaping, and overnight parking. Which would you like? Overnight parking it is. Ray, overnight parking for occasional guests continues to be a concern. What would you do to resolve this?
I think we have to look around the community where we have property that can be converted to parking. I know that there was a plan, that there's supposedly a plan in place to put parking in the area out here and also up by the dog park. We have to move forward on this, because we do have to create more parking. Parking is becoming a serious problem. We don't want to just allow people to park on the street full-time, because we don't want to turn the community into Levittown. And if anybody doesn't know what Levittown is, it's a community up in New York where right after World War II, for the returning vets, they built 17,000 houses. And they were small houses built with 1-car parking, because at that time most families had 1 car. 2, you were wealthy. And then all those families had children. The children grew up and they got cars. And now if you try to drive down the street, there's only room to drive 1 car down the middle of the
30
street.
seconds.
We don't want that. We have to make some type of arrangement, though. We have to create more parking. We've got some community areas that can be converted to parking. We've got to do it.
Perfect. Good job, Ray.
Next up is Marilyn. Same 3 topics.
Okay.
Gate access, landscaping.
Can I just ditto what Melanie said? Because I thought it was right on mark. But I will share a story. When Brightview was a little late putting down the mulch, they did a fantastic job, great mulch. Then the new landscaping company came in and raked it all out. And it was only like 6 weeks later. So I was more than a little disturbed. And I told them, don't come again unless you knock on my door and I'm with you when you do whatever you're going to do in my yard. Because that's what Brightview did. They always came to the door and asked if I had anything special that I wanted done, or, you know, they were really, really good. But I understood that other residents were not happy with them. I will say this second time around with this company, they've been better. And
30 seconds.
consequently, I didn't have any negative thoughts about them when they were finished. But landscaping was the big increase to our assessments this year, our budget.
Thank you, Marilyn. Don Welch, you're up.
I'm going to pick landscaping, but I'm going to take it from a different point of view.
Go for it.
The landscaping, the problems were with the contracts. The contracts did not have any quality controls. Then we just did an RFP for our community common area landscaping. It was 65 pages long, which I thought was a little exorbitant. We rearranged it. We made it a 15-page RFP with some exhibits that were included with that. Those bids are in the process of being evaluated. And the question that I want to ask all of you, do you want the cheapest company, or do you want the company that's going to give you the best quality that's still within our budget? So that discussion is going to be upcoming. There were some that are much different than others, but I just want to give you an example. We did the wall. I just got to do this quickly. We got a bid from Crawford to trim the trees. We got another bid from Down to Earth, which was half the price. Then they got worried that maybe they'd underbid, and then they wanted to
30
raise it
seconds.
a little bit. I see it. They want to raise it a little bit, but they did not have a quality arborist that was trimming the trees, which Crawford does. So we went with the quality, and the same thing's happening with all the tree lifting that you see around the community in the common area. So I think we need quality control.
Thank you, Don. Next up is Kathy Conway. You have gate access, landscaping, and overnight parking.
Okay, I'm ready.
Which topic?
Oh, sorry.
Wait, let me reset
Overnight parking.
Overnight parking. The question was, overnight parking for occasional guests continues to be a concern. What would you recommend to resolve this?
Thank you. I'm afraid a minute and a half is not enough time to talk about the gates. So I'm happy to talk about the gates, but not on a minute and a half. So with the overnight parking, Sandoval's our home. We all want to have family and friends over for the holidays, a visit, football games. Parking is an issue. So with the overnight parking, the challenge is the office hours are Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 or 8 to 5. So it's not easy to get a pass when, in fact, it's 11 o'clock at night and somebody's had a couple beers too many and you need to arrange for the vehicle. A solution that I have for these situations is an automated system, an electronic request. You go into the Sandoval Living page, there's a portal with electronic voting. Maybe we can use that platform. I don't know how it all works. But what I envision is that the person, the homeowner, would put in the make and model, the date and the time, and then the resident's name. And the system would accept it, and then you would screen print the parking pass that would go on the dashboard, and then the vehicle is brought up to the clubhouse and left
30
and parked
seconds.
overnight. Simple solution, and it would save a lot of aggravation and frustration with these 11 o'clock calls from neighbors saying, can I park a car in your driveway? So again, I'm happy to talk about gates. The minute and a half was not enough time to really get into the details. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Okay, Todd Reinhardt, you're up next. Which would you like?
Alex, I'll take gates for 1,000.
The daily double.
Oops. Sorry, Todd.
Todd, the question is, our gate access is a big concern. What is your approach to creating a safe, secure, and reliable community access system?
All right. I don't have the answer to the gates. I think it's been a real problem within the community for as long as that most of us have lived here. Let's be brutally honest. I think there's a problem with the mechanicals of the old iron gates along with the Envera thing. It just isn't working. I don't have an answer in regards to the solution, but why haven't we come up with a solution? That's my challenge. The other thing that frustrates me the most is the Envera contract is $640,880.77 over a 5-year period. Are we getting a value out of that? We pay $90,000 a year for monitoring and the service agreement. That's a lot of bananas, folks, that we're spending for a system that doesn't work. We all get frustrated by it. Some people don't have a problem with it. A lot of people do have a problem with it. I don't have the answer, but as a board member, I would challenge us as a community, let's work together and find a solution.
30
Something
seconds.
that works. There you go. There's the gates.
Thank you, Todd.
And last but not least is Al Roper.
I guess I'd like to talk on the gates also. I have a little bit of experience with them. There's been suggestions that maybe we need man gates. Looking into that, it is required to have a air-conditioned building and with a toilet. So the minimum, even if we just had a man gate at Veterans, if we could get a building for $150,000 and then man that building for $150,000 a year, that would cost us the first year $300,000 plus every year after that, that would be an additional $150,000 for the labor. And then the two other gates, we would still have to have some system like Envera that would cost us the $90,000 a year. So I don't have the answer either. However, I do know that right now we are paying somewhere around $35,000 a year in gate repairs. Seems like a lot of money, but that's a lot less than
30 seconds.
$300,000 the first year that we'd be manning them. I think we can, if we repair and get newer equipment, I think the system that we have will work. And no system is ever perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. And that concludes the question portion, and we'll be moving on to closing remarks. The candidates will have 3 minutes for a closing remark.
First, I'd like to say to the candidates, again, you guys are doing an exceptional job. It's almost over. Then you get to ad-lib with the audience. And to the audience, I'd like to say this is the best audience I've witnessed since moving to Sandoval. Thank you very much for your patience. In the last round, each of you are going to be given an opportunity to provide your closing remarks. You're limited to 3 minutes. If you don't need all that time, you're welcome to surrender it. Just make sure that you make your closing remarks count. Al Roper, you're up first.
As your elected board member, I have worked for the betterment of Sandoval by teaming with 6 other elected directors as well as the general manager. Coming to a consensus often requires extensive research, open-mindedness, and a willingness to consider different viewpoints. I possess the courage to stand up for what I know is right while always demonstrating courtesy, openness, honesty, and respect. Our current board of directors is fairly well balanced in that we have a leader organizer, a person involved in local politics, a bean counter, a legal advisor, a recording secretary, a realtor environmentalist, and a nuts and bolts guy. I am that nuts and bolts guy. And I believe that an effective board should have one nuts and bolts guy. If you agree, I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you. Next up is Todd Reinhardt.
Great. Thank you for all attending. I appreciate you listening to at least all of our positions on the issues. I've been a conservative banker for 42 years. I know I only look 30, but I've been in the business for 42 years. There's one thing that I want to go back to and touch on very quickly is I've experienced, and a lot of you in this room have been in business. You know that business never is a plateau, it's always cyclical. Okay, I've experienced 4 business cycles. I started in banking in 1978 when prime rate at that time was 18%. So I kind of had an idea of the good times and the bad times. My comment is in regards to contingency funding and reserve funding, utopia does not exist. There needs to be a plan B. There needs to be a strategy on how you're going to fund this because some of us are old enough to remember this, the old Fram oil filter commercial. It's either you're going to pay me now or you're going to pay me later. So I would rather be proactive and start funding in a very conservative way so that we do not have any surprises. What will I do as a board member, as your board member, is I will always ask the tough question. I'm not afraid to ask the tough question. I will always do the right thing. I will communicate. I will communicate to you. I can be trusted and I am honest. I will solicit feedback from you all and make my judgments based on your feedback. We all live here. We're part of a wonderful community, and I would appreciate your support. Thank you so very much.
Good job. Thank you, Todd.
Next up is Don Wells.
I want you to know it's been a great evening, and I personally want to thank all of you who came to listen, and I want to thank all of the candidates that have joined me here in answering all these questions. Serving on an HOA board is a position that requires an enormous amount of time and dedication. As Al will attest, it's bigger and it seems like it gets bigger and bigger. And over the past 3 years, I've attempted to provide you with the best service possible. There have been issues that have occurred that I've not agreed with. And on those occasions, I have spoken up. So let me refresh your memory. The very first board meeting that we had up after transition, the question came up, do we need a finance committee? Well, the board consensus is no, they didn't want a finance committee. They could handle it themselves. There were 2 board members that voted to have a finance committee, Rob Zikovic and me. So I don't want you to forget who the second one was. They backtracked and they set up the committee. I was very outspoken at the 2018 budget meetings where an increase in the home sales assessment was proposed. In fact, I would say that my efforts probably stopped that. And regarding the clubhouse expansion, I personally asked multiple times about the cost in our budget. I would go into Sean Wilson's office and I'd say, are you sure that you can build this building for this amount? As was Todd Reinhardt saying that out on social media. Oh, yes, it's well within the budget. We would talk about it at the board meetings. We keep our hands off of that. They're taking care of that. Okay, when I asked for the proof, there wasn't any. So when all the bids were returned, I pursued their release. I asked before it went out to bid, I asked to see the plans, just the plans. And I was met with profanity to get that blank off my back. So I don't make public knowledge of all these things because I don't think that that's the way you treat other people. And I'm only telling you this so you can see the real me. And I think Marilyn kind of helped me say some of these things that I'm telling you right now. So I'm going to tell you, I did not sit on my hands, which I have been accused of. And this year, my attempt was to include everyone in the decision-making process. And I believe that you can say that this was the case. So with the current ongoing projects and the TM litigation, again, it's something that I can't talk about, and Al can't talk about.
30 seconds.
I strongly encourage you to stick with your current board for stability. Actions speak louder than words, and I personally will think, include, communicate, then do, and I certainly would sincerely appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Next up, we have Melanie Palmer.
Okay, so I am so not political. The whole campaigning thing really is challenging for me. So it's hard for me to be able to say all my experience and everything else, I am going to be the best possible board member you could ever have. Like that's just not in my nature to be able to say. What I can tell you is I truly love this community. I will listen to people. You might not always like what I have to hear, but I will say what I'm feeling and what I think. I will ask insightful questions. And the other piece is I kind of want everybody to understand why in the world I'm doing this. I do work full time, and I do have a family, so I do have other obligations. And being a board member does take a whole lot of commitment. I believe quality time is just as, sometimes even more valuable than quantity of the amount of time that you can put into something. But my husband and I moved to Cape Coral from Massachusetts. We moved to the Northeast Cape from Massachusetts in about 15 years ago. And right when we moved here, we had just purchased our house, and I learned that Sandoval was being developed. And I was absolutely devastated. I looked at the plans, I saw all the things, I was like, oh, that is where I want to be. I wanted to be in Sandoval. And literally, phase by phase, I watched this community be built. Sunday afternoons, my husband and I would drive through the gates, would tour the model homes, would walk around and envision what it would be like to be able to live in this beautiful community. The timing was never right. First, we had just bought our house. Then the market crashed, of course, and everybody's value went down. There was no way we could sell. I had 2 young girls, so my focus was on raising them. And it just was never the right opportunity. But I never doubted at some point I would end up being in Sandoval. As time went on, the girls got older. They wanted to play outside. They wanted to have neighborhood friends and ride their bikes. My husband, being in law enforcement, wanted them to have a safe place to play. He didn't want them just out, hanging out in streets with no sidewalks and cars racing up and down and wild dogs running loose. So we said, that's it. We're moving to Sandoval. This is it. We're going. So 2015, we moved here. We live in phase 3. I absolutely love it. I am running for the board because I truly love this community. And I did not wait a decade to get here to allow anything bad to happen to the community. So while I may not have all the answers or served on boards for, multiple years, I am committed to making this the best possible community it can be. And I do feel I have a lot to offer, and if I have to go on and say all my accomplishments, it'll kill me to say it, but I do feel that I could contribute well. And that's it.
Thank you, Melanie. Next up is Kathy Conway.
I'm honored to be a candidate for the 2020 HOA Board of Directors. And if elected, I'm committed to doing my part to make Sandoval an even better community to live. Let me tell you why I'm running for the board. I've regularly attended HOA board meetings to become better informed and visible. I bring proven management and leadership experience to draw upon moving forward. I enjoy volunteering. I'm retired. I have the time, the patience, and the enthusiasm to engage in community issues. I'm civic-minded. I enjoy getting to know my neighbors, building healing relations within the community, and I take great pride in Sandoval. I wish to put our community's best interests first and seek to build long-term value for Sandoval, both socially and financially. I understand that the issues such as dependability of gate access, security, budget oversight, landscaping, the clubhouse improvement project, and accountability are not trivial. I have a willingness to dig into the details as few things are cut and dry. I will ensure transparency and inclusiveness in decision-making processes. I will tackle challenges, serve with honesty and integrity, assume responsibility for my actions, and be accountable to you, the homeowners. I ask you for your support. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Kathy. Ray, you're up.
I'm running for the board because I think that my years of real estate experience can be helpful. And once again, I think this is a beautiful community. It's a wonderful place to live. However, I talk to people all the time on the outside, and they say, I wouldn't live in a gated community. Too many rules, too many regulations, and so on. The rules and regulations have to be for the benefit of the residents. And every rule, every regulation has to be looked at. This is not a wonderful place to live if you come out in the morning and find your car's been towed. It's not a wonderful place to live if you're pulling into the gate and the thing crashes down on your windshield. These are problems that have to be addressed, and this can be the premier place to live because it really is. As far as budgets and so on, but budgets have to be scrutinized. We have to stay on top of it. Everything has to be analyzed, and we have to stay on top of it and make sure money is being well spent. We don't want to waste anything. There's a few little areas around here that I look around and I question why. For instance, Calypso Park. It's beautiful. Who uses it? Anybody go there? I mean, I walked through it a couple of times. It's lovely. But do you picnic there? No. Why? There's no bathroom. There's little things have been forgotten, and perhaps that area can be put to better use. I think that suggestions should come from the residents. It has to be about the residents, not 6 people, 8 people on a board making decisions. I think everything has to be thrown out. I think we have to go to the residents and ask them what's on your mind? What do you want? What will make your life better? What can we do to make your quality of life better here in this community? And I think that's what it's all about. I think that's how we can accomplish what we need to accomplish, and what we need to accomplish is to make this the incredible place to live that it has the potential to be. And I hope you'll consider voting for me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you, Ray. Yeah. And last up is Marilyn Stout.
Well, I'm kind of used to being last because of Stout being down there on the alphabet, although Don saves me. The first thing I want to do is thank everybody for attending tonight and being so attentive. So consequently, you're going to have tough choices. There are 4 seats and 8 candidates, and it's not going to be easy. I served with Todd. We were reminded a little while ago that about over 20 years ago, we were on the chamber board together. And, you know, Melanie emailed me a couple of months ago to give me an idea about fundraising and are there any ways that we can get grants? And that put a thought in my mind. Yes, there are ways to get grants. So I put that in one of my answers, but it actually came from Melanie. So I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that. Yes, I would love to stay on the board, to be reelected. But of all the candidates, I have to say that Don and Al have done so much for this community. They really have. And of the 4, I hope they're reelected. And if I am, certainly I'm going to work with whoever. We have a wonderful board right now, but that doesn't mean that all of the problems have been solved. No, but we work as a team, we work together, and when decisions are made, we live with those decisions. My husband retired with 28 years active service in the Army. So I saw a lot of places. And living in Cape Coral 38 years, I can tell you, we live in the best gated community in Cape Coral. Yes, there are other gated communities that probably offer more and maybe the landscaping is better, but from what I've heard about the assessments they pay, I mean, we are really fortunate. And I hope we continue this way, and I hope that our standards remain high. Better, yes, but they're good now. And Sandoval is just a wonderful place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. You've got a tough field and some tough choices to make. Doug?
Okay, thank you very much. Let's give everybody a nice round of applause for a great performance. I want to thank all our candidates for their willingness to respond to our questions and share their insights. I also want to thank our moderators, Jerry and Grady, and Eric, our ace light guy, and as always, Vic Neichfeld for the sound and so forth. I also want to thank our marshals who kept everybody under control, and as far as I know, you never got the Chris I was never used tonight. So that's terrific. And I'd also like to thank everybody in the room for your support and cooperation in making this evening run smoothly. We obviously finished about a half hour before we expected to, so we'll move into the mingling phase at this point. We'll give you a chance to ask individual questions of the board members, or of the board candidates, pardon me. And also I'll remind you that beyond tonight, we are running 2 questions a week in our Sandoval Cape Coral Facebook page. There'll be one set of questions coming out tomorrow. There'll be another set coming out on Saturday, and we will continue that through the election cycle. We also will be publishing a second edition of Sandoval Today, the newsletter, a week from Sunday, which will again contain all of the questions and answers that have been provided by our candidates. Also on Friday, each of the candidates has made a video with Vic and Harold, and we will be running those videos on our Cape Coral Facebook page this Friday. So you'll get a chance to hear them in their own words, their own script, once again talking to you about their candidacy. So keep an eye out for that. And then finally, the March 1st, on Sunday afternoon, we're going to have a community picnic here out on the lawn. And at that event, you will have the chance to have the candidates, listen to the candidates make some informal remarks, not speeches, guys, informal remarks. And also they will be there to mingle with the crowd. And in addition to that, there's going to be games for the kids, contests. There will be food trucks. You're invited to bring picnic lunches. Hopefully, I think we're going to have some music. And it should be just a nice event to bring the community together at the near the end of the campaign. The voting is open until noon on March 12th, when the electronic voting closes, and the paper balloting at the clubhouse closes at noon. It opens again, paper balloting opens again down at the yacht club at 5 o'clock. That'll run till 6 o'clock, at which time the election will be declared over. The votes will be opened and counted. It'll be combined with our electronic vote, and Jerry and our attorney will be announcing the results. So look forward to that. And what else do I have here? Remember the picnic, I mentioned that. So the candidates will be available for the next half hour anyway. If you would like to stay and talk with them, please feel free to do so. And if you are ready to head out, feel free to do so as well. And thank you and good night.